Hey everybody! In this video, we'll be taking a good look at movement in Deadlock. All of the different tricks and tech that is currently out there, and how to make the most use out of those during your games. If you're just getting into the game, practicing good movement habits might just be the single most important thing you can do to elevate your experience. Not just to become a better player, but also to have more fun with the game. I remember the first day that I tried out Deadlock and everything just felt a bit weird and slow and sluggish. The map felt too big, and even doing simple dodges felt a bit out of place because you went from 0 to 100 back down to 0 speed in a short amount of time. It just felt weird. All of that though completely went away after I put in some time into understanding the movement, messing around with it, and trying to master it. And with all the stuff that I know now, it has honestly transformed my experience completely. I mean, you already know, Deadlock's become my new main game. I like it that much. So with this video, I'm just going to pass on the knowledge. We'll go over everything movement related. We'll start with the very basics, and then we'll just keep pushing it further and further until by the end, you also know how to move around like this. Okay, so if we're starting with the basics, nothing is more basic than simply walking around. But even here, there is already a distinction to be made between normal move speed and sprint speed. And that is the first thing that we'll look at. If we move over to the roster of heroes in Deadlock, which can be viewed from the main menu, you'll find that every hero has 3 stats regarding their movement. There's move speed, sprint speed, and stamina. Now stamina is very important, but to actually sprint in Deadlock, you do not need any stamina at all. So we're going to look at that a bit later in the video. The reason that you don't need stamina to sprint is because, unlike in most shooter games that you might have played, Deadlock does not have a typical sprint button. Instead, the only way to sprint is to simply not shoot your gun for 1 second and not take damage for 5 seconds. Basically, so long as you're not in combat, your character will automatically go into a sprint state without you even having to think much about it. But yes, that also means that when you are in combat, your character will be limited to just the base speed. Also, something to note is that most characters in Deadlock actually start off with 0 sprint speed at the start of the game, which looks a bit weird in this menu, but if you're wondering how that works, sprint speed is just added to the base move speed as soon as you start sprinting. But yes, that also means that for most heroes, at the start of the game, there isn't a distinction between being in combat or not when it comes to their move speed. And that's mostly fine as well, because at the start of the game, most players will be stuck in their lane anyway. There are some heroes that thrive off of getting early ganks like Lash or Bebop, and those characters do have that extra sprint speed right off the bat. Still though, even if you play a hero that has 0 sprint speed at the start of the game, knowing what the distinction is and when you're sprinting is important, since many items in the soul shop don't just give you move speed, they also give you sprint speed, which again is only useful outside of combat. Do note though that if you have a lot of items with a lot of sprint speed stacked, it will take a while to reach that maximum speed. Your character doesn't just suddenly go from normal walking speed to max sprint speed, it will build up over time. Now before we get into stamina and all the moves that come with stamina usage, I want to quickly go over the moves in Deadlock that specifically do not require stamina, and that you can therefore always do. The first one is crouching. This one may seem obvious, you can crouch at any time by pressing Control by default, and this is great for taking cover and crouch spamming during fights. Crouch spamming specifically works really well on some characters thanks to just how far they crouch down, and it does not work so much on other characters. There's also a vault or a climb animation that you can perform on any ledge that also does not consume any stamina. You can get on the transit line from the ground, which, if you do it from the ground, also doesn't consume any stamina. And last but not least, you can slide down ramps and staircases by holding crouch on a sloped surface. Also completely free of stamina usage. And the slide especially is something that we'll get back to very soon, as this one is going to be used in many different ways to extend movement combos and do a whole bunch of other things. But yeah, first up, a basic look at stamina and the things that you can do with it. If you take a good look at your crosshair, you'll see that you have these bars next to it. And these bars is what we refer to as your stamina bars. Now Deadlock has a bunch of special moves, as they're called, that typically consume one of these stamina bars, and much like with the base speed and the sprint speeds, different heroes start with different amounts of stamina. The default for most of them is 3, but Maginnis and Vindicta, for example, only start with 2, and Ivy gets to start off with 4. The first 3 and most basic special moves that we have in Deadlock is the dash, which can be performed by pressing shift by default, and you can do that either on the ground or while you're in the air. Then there is the double jump, which allows you to jump again while you're already in the air at the cost of 1 stamina bar. And then there is also the downward dash, which can also be used in the air to drop down quickly by double tapping the crouch button. These are your basic moves that consume stamina. And when talking about these in the context of advanced movement in Deadlock, what we're mostly going to focus on is how to get the most use out of these, and how to get the most use out of your stamina charges while covering the most amount of ground. What I, for example, see a lot of newer players do is that they spam the dash button the moment that they get shot at or when they're in trouble, which might help them get out of a sticky situation for the moment, but it more often than not also leaves them with an empty stamina bar, after which they'll just be chased down anyway, or they'll have a very bad time simply getting around the map. So the very first thing that we will start off with, now that you know the absolute basics, is showing you a better way to use these moves. A way that is not only more stamina efficient, but also just outright faster. And we'll start with one of the most basic combos in the game, and that is the dash slide. Now just a few minutes ago, I showed you that you can slide down staircases and whatnot to gain some extra speed. But what if I told you that anytime you have enough movement speed, you can get into a slide as well, even if you're on a flat surface? Seriously, go try it out. Go buy a bunch of move speed items and you'll see that you'll be able to slide instead of crouching when you press Control. I think the exact threshold for you to be able to get into a slide is 10 meters per second. And with the dash ability, that easily gets you there. Which means that, yeah, you can slide out of every single dash, which in turn allows you to keep some of that dash momentum for longer. And this is what we refer to as a simple dash slide. Getting into the habit of simply sliding out of every dash was the first thing that I taught myself, and it greatly helped me with making faster rotations, getting out of bad fights, and just generally allowed me to play the game in a much more efficient way. This goes double, by the way, if you learn the map well enough so that you're starting to use your dashes just before a downward slope, so that when you get into that slide, you'll get another boost because you're sliding downwards. Now, building off of the idea of dash sliding, I think the next logical move to start practicing is the dash jump, which is similar to the dash slide. It's just that at the end of your dash, you do a jump instead of a slide. I will say that the dash jump is significantly more difficult to execute because it requires precise timing, and it also costs 2 stamina bars instead of 1. I know that may not sound too good because we're trying to preserve stamina as much as possible, but this dash jump can also be followed up by that same slide at the end of it. And with just how much ground you'll cover with this move, it is easily worth the 2 stamina bars if you need to get out of a sticky situation. Now the goal with the dash jump is to basically use your jump right at the end of your dash. And the good thing about Deadlock is that the game even tells you when that timing is. If you do a normal dash from the ground, you will see that your stamina bar lights up blue for just a little bit. And this is when you'll have to press the jump button to successfully perform a dash jump. And no, you cannot spam your jump button either. You only get 1 chance per dash. Now, since this costs 2 stamina, you might be wondering what the difference really is between just doing 2 simple dashes back to back. And to be fair, 2 simple dashes get you about just as far. The difference here though with the dash jump is that you don't have to wait for your dash cooldown, and you don't have that little awkward pause in the middle of your movement. It just allows you to get everything out in one clean motion, which is just the fastest way to get in and out of a fight. So that's a pretty cool move, but we are not done yet because we can make this movement combo even longer. In fact, we can extend this dash jump in a few different ways. We can do a dash jump dash, which looks something like this, or a dash jump jump, which is a bit less useful, but still very strong around certain parts of the map. Now, this combo of movement is possible because by default, every player can only dash and double jump once while being airborne. And to reset this, players would usually have to touch the ground again. But because we did both our dash and our initial jump from the ground, we're now still able to either use our dash in the air or double jump coming out of the dash jump combo, or both if we have 4 bars of stamina. Because yes, both of these moves, they will take all 3 of your stamina bars. They are very costly to do and don't even necessarily get you the most amount of ground for that stamina, but sometimes that little extra distance or height is all you need to get away from a bad situation. So again, knowing that these moves are an option is fairly important, especially since with the air dash you can change your direction mid-air by either dashing to the left or the right, which can be really good if you're coming out of a dash jump and need to quickly break line of sight. Of course, the dash jump dash can also easily be followed up by yet another slide. The slide is basically a combo extender for every one of these combos, although coming out of a slide with this combo usually will not carry as much momentum as you do with just a normal dash jump, because with that air dash you do lose quite a bit of speed. This is because in Deadlock there is such a thing as air friction, which basically slows you down as you move through the air. Similar to when you're sliding, you eventually come to a halt too. But there are also a couple of ways to temporarily remove this air friction from your character, which allows you to then carry much more of that momentum forward. That stuff is a bit more niche though, so we'll look at that a bit later in the video. I'm not even 100% sure if it's intended or not. So before looking at that, I first want to look at the slide a bit more and show you some really useful tech that I actually end up using myself a lot. So the first good way to utilize the slide mid-combat isn't just to extend the dash, but it can also be used to shorten it. You see, you can slide out of a dash before the dash animation has finished, which usually wouldn't be too good because you just end up going less far and you'll cover less distance. But in the laning phase, it can be crucial when it comes to last hitting troopers. Very often I find myself in a situation where a trooper is about to die. Maybe I'm reloading or maybe I don't want to shoot it because the opponent might steal the orb. So what I would do is instead dash to the trooper, instantly followed up by a slide, so that I can then melee the trooper safely. Now you might be asking me why not just do a normal dash? And the answer to that is that you simply cannot melee during the dash animation. You cannot shoot your gun during it either. If you dash, you're basically locked into that dash. But if you cancel the dash with your slide, then suddenly you're able to shoot your gun and melee and do all of the other things. Another thing with the slide that you might have noticed is that during the slide animation, your character has infinite ammo. Your ammo actually turns green and shows this infinite number right here. Now this can be very useful for breaking boxes and gold vases around the map without having to reload afterwards. Or you can start neutral camps with what is essentially a slightly larger clip. But again, where this is also very useful is in the lane. Every guardian, for example, is sitting right next to a staircase. And as I mentioned, as long as you are on a slope, you can slide. So if you're able to at any point walk up to their staircase and shoot the guardian from there, you can shoot it while constantly walking up the staircase and sliding down the staircase. Every time that you slide and shoot at the same time, well, those bullets will not be taken out of your current magazine. So if you do this right, and if you time this right, you can essentially extend your magazine size by quite a bit. And with how long reload times are in this game and how short the windows are for damaging the guardian sometimes, using this can be a big difference maker. Another thing that I like to do with my slide sometimes when I use it at the end of a movement combo is jump out of it before the momentum wears off so that I can keep that momentum in the air a bit longer. Almost like a bunny hop. It looks something like this, and if you time it right, it can be useful in a multitude of different ways. For one, again, you can keep more momentum out of the slide while you're airborne, and if you have enough momentum, you can even slide a second time when you land. And then two, doing this also allows you to carry that momentum up staircases or slopes for a little bit, at least faster than would otherwise be possible. And I would say that this is quite a significant distance to cover, all the while using up just 2 stamina bars. Something that I also want to look at are the transit lines that you can find on each lane. Again, they might be pretty self-explanatory, but there's 2 things about these that people often overlook. The first one is that getting on a transit line resets your air dash and double jump, much like touching the ground. This means that coming off of the transit line, you're always able to use your dash and your double jump, of course if you have the stamina for it, which then allows you to reach the top of the rooftops very, very easily. The second thing that people usually don't know about when it comes to these transit lines is that if you use the crouch button to get off of them, it removes all of the air friction or the air resistance from your character for about 2 seconds. It's that thing that I mentioned earlier. I'm not sure if it's 100% intended or not, I'm not sure it's a feature, but what this means right now is that if you press crouch to let go of the transit lines and then immediately dash, you will stay at maximum dash speed for all of those 2 seconds, until the air friction is reapplied to your character. This can allow you to make some really fast rotations to different lanes off of the transit lines, and it can even be used in combination with some abilities that usually put your character in a standstill, since some of those abilities are coded to also get you in a standstill through air friction. Good examples would be Yamato's Q ability, or Lash's ultimate ability, or Dynamo's ultimate ability. All of these usually put your character pretty stationary right after pressing the button, and all of those can benefit from this trick. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I've actually managed to pull this off with ultimates in a game even once, but using that reduced air resistance to rotate fast or just to chase someone down, that is something that I've been able to do. And that is a trick that I've been able to integrate into my gameplay already. So it's a bit niche, but it's definitely not useless. Now, I've decided with this video to leave all the hero-specific movement tech, like the viscous jump dash extension through his fist, or maybe the shotgun slides that you can do with Shiv. I've decided to keep those for the specific hero guides that will come a bit later. If I were to put them in here, there would just be so much to go over, and this is more meant as a universal guide that anybody can look at and that anybody can start implementing in their gameplay, no matter what hero they're playing. That being said though, there are a few items in the store that are also very much movement based, and I just wanted to explain them a bit and show you maybe 1 or 2 tips with them. So first up is Majestic Leap, and it is this ability that leaps you into the air and then you can reactivate it to go back down. This thing is great, not just for engaging, but also very useful for making rotations. What a lot of players don't know though, is that when you reactivate your leap to go back down faster, it also instantly changes your direction. So you can leap one way and then turn around 90 degrees and go full speed the other way. You can also extend the leap by a double jump or a dash out of it, or both, which allows you to cover way more ground and basically get you from one lane to the other almost instantly. Second up is another one of my favorite items, which is Warp Stone, which is essentially just a small teleport. Now, I've seen a lot of people have some trouble with this because they're hitting walls and thinking that it's bugging out or that it's just not working properly. So for that, I just want to show you how the teleport really functions in this game, because it's not bugging out, it's just not working off of the line of sight that you have with the crosshair. If you look at Raid, for example, she also has a teleport built into her kit, and with this one, you can actually see where you're going to land beforehand. Now, what you'll notice about this is that even if your crosshair is at a specific area, if your character is close to a wall, the teleport will actually get stuck behind the wall too. This is also how Warp Stone works. These abilities are based on your character's line of sight and not your reticle line of sight. Now, that of course doesn't make it less frustrating when you get caught behind a wall, because it often just results in dying, but now you should at least know why it happens and maybe how to avoid it. Last up for this video is an item called Superior Stamina, which is special because it gives you 2 air dashes and 2 double jumps per time that you're airborne, which makes that no air resistance trick that I showed you with the zipline a lot stronger, since you can now double dash out of the zipline to really zoom across the map crazy fast. So yeah, just another thing to keep in mind. And with that, I think I'll end the video. I think that's just about it. I am aware there's a few smaller things that aren't in this video. There's a bunch of weird behavior with some edges when you use the dash jump and some other unintentional things. But everything that's confirmed to be unintentional, I've just decided to leave those out because Deadlock is still in very early alpha. It is going to be updated very regularly, and those small things are likely going to get fixed very soon. I'm just hoping that this video will stay relevant for more than 2 weeks. But if there's more stuff that does end up coming out that is intentional, that isn't in this video, I'll make sure to give you an update. So yeah, that is going to be it for now. If you want to practice any of these things without jumping into a real game, but the sandbox map is not big enough for you, then you can press F7 in the main menu to open the dev console and type in Changelevel street test to load up a game by yourself. And then once you're in game, you can type Citadel Hero testing enabled true to get the same tools as you would have in the sandbox mode, so you can give yourself unlimited stamina and money and just practice around. I'll leave these in the description too, because you're not gonna write them down, you're probably too lazy for that. And I can't have you searching throughout the whole video for the specific spot where I shared these in-game commands. So yeah, description, that's where you'll find them. I want to thank all of you for the nice comments that I got on the beginner's guide. I was not expecting such a warm reception to this big channel shift. I'm happy to see a lot of new faces here, ready for this new adventure, so to speak. So yeah, you can expect a lot more videos from me very soon. Thank you all so much for watching, guys. I'll be back in a few days.